And we're going to give Sebastian a minute to introduce himself. Cool. Hello, good afternoon, good morning if you're viewing us from US. Yes, I think that's where our time difference is so huge, right? And a lot of us in Africa, it's of course afternoon. And I'm logging in from Botswana, Gaborone, a city right next to South Africa, a big country with a small population. And this is the usual podcast that we do every Saturday where we bring all good news on STEAM education. So, once again, I have our awesome presenter, Douglas, as he joins in and presents. We're going to give Mr. Mahamba a minute or so to introduce himself and tell us where he's coming from and his passion for STEAM education. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Mahamba.
Thank you so much, Miss Kim, and thank you so much, Douglas. I'm really excited to be here on board, and thank you for STEM Zen. It has been really, really streaming, and I'm excited just to join from Mwanza, Tanzania. And my name is Mahamba Sebastian. Well, I'm a teacher, educator. I've been teaching public school for almost 13 years. Also, I've been a leader supporting one of the organization which is called TELTA, Tanzanian English Language Association in Mwanza, where we support teachers and students in projects related to STEM. But again, I'm also a leader in Africa ELTA. I'm the vice president, supporting the whole continent of Africa in issue related to languages. So I'm excited to be here on board just to share about the AI from masters to machine with Douglas. Thank you so much. And back to you, Miss Kim.
Miss Kim, we can't hear you, please.
You're muted.
Hey, I'm sorry. Apologies. Thank you, Mr. Mahamba, joining us from Mwanza, Tanzania. And we're gonna give it to Douglas to do his intro and take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are very excited to have you all as part of our our 10th podcast. This podcast really pulls the science together from the other podcasts. So I'll wait, everyone. I am going to go shut the video off just to help save bandwidth. Every day in the news, we hear the phrase AI, artificial intelligence. What is it? Why does it matter? Why is it important to us? Today, we're going to take a very quick journey through the past, the present, and the future. We talk about real intelligence and how people are in this loop, and how machines and now thinking machines, limited thinking machines that think and do. So we're going to go from muscles, meaning we use machines to do things, to minds with artificial intelligence. Just quickly, for those of you who are joining us the first time, we're the STEM Zen program. Worldwide, there's an issue where students and all of us lack basic science. And so the purpose is, we're the Indie Ed Project charitable organization. We teach science and we have lots of materials. And through Ms. Sally's organization, you can have access to it. There are 10. This is our, like I mentioned, this is our 10th podcast. Please go back and look at the other 9. Today, especially with artificial intelligence and AI, we will pull together so much science that we've had in the previous sessions. We're going to quickly mention about the agenda as we followed in the other ones. And then let's keep in mind, there's a lot of material here. We do the basics and then we build on it. But keep in mind 3 words as we go quickly through this material: smart, intelligent, both human and machine, social. We humans are social. We interact, but now we're interacting with machines. Machines interact with us as well. And the big word sentient, which just means self-aware. We are able to do things and think things ourselves, and now we're creating machines that are doing thinking and doing for themselves. Smart, social, and sentient. We'll keep that in mind as we progress. We need to start with what's the definition, because there's a lot of definitions out there. What do we mean by artificial intelligence, AI? The definition we're using is machines' abilities to think and do things like or better than human minds and muscles do. We humans make decisions based on our values, interests, and goals, but who sets these for artificial intelligence? This is a serious and important, but we hope what you take away from this next hour of this podcast is a positive influence and a positive benefit to our lives. But it's going to take all of us to be involved in helping to shape AI so it can be a positive force for humanity. We'll be talking about 3 different books and videos, but it's toys to tech. It's the past. We look at the past. How have people used machines and computers in the past? How we use them today. Simply said, we look at the past to understand the present, to prepare and adapt for the future. So let's start right to it. In 7 steps, we're going to look at bots, and by bots we mean robots and chatbots. There's a term called automata, and that is how in the past people were able to make mechanical people looking machines, and people and the machines would self-act, self-do things. And so we'll talk about automata to artificial intelligence. Let's jump right into it. We have a lot to cover today. Please interrupt with questions. Let's make this pertinent, but let's cover some basics. Okay. In the past, faith, right? In the past, like ancient Greece, they used machines to lift the stones to make the temples. But then in Greece, they had an ingenious, they would light the fire in the morning ceremonially, and then under the ground, that fire then heated water that would then open the doors with the steam. The water turned to steam that opened the heavy doors. And then at night, they would shut off the fire and it would close the doors. Well, then 500 plus years ago, cities would use clocks. And so we've used bots publicly in places where people pray. Next page, please. Then the rich people could make automata to do things, and they were actually able to make machines that would write or play a piano like harpsichord, right? And so it was only the rich, and it was really for fun and for entertainment, but people were able to use cams and different controls to make the machines move and to mimic humans. On the next page, we show some of the controls that were mechanical. You can see the cylinder there. It's called a cam. A cam is like a squished circle that pushes things up and down, and those mechanical controls would move, like I said, machines that could move, machines that could write, and it looked like the machines were starting to mimic humans, all based on mechanical controls. In addition to just the fun things, just the things for toys to entertain the rich, we use machines to do things to make it easier for humans. In the past, it helped grind the grains, right? They're made into the breads. It helped. Then, about 100 years ago, they used the processes to make cars, and right, and how today we now have computers that control the machines that make our products. And so much of our devices, from cars to airplanes to smartphones, have machines involved in the manufacturing. In addition to just making our final products, Machines are involved in making computers. You can see here the pick and place machines that do the layouts of the circuit boards called a motherboard on a computer. But also we have pretty smart machines that can do one task, and that is like things like welding cars. Let's press on. There's so much to cover today. Form, right? It's interesting how we humans design computers that look like us. And so you can see the people that design them, and they're robots that act and look like us, that we design computers with human form. We design artificial intelligence that can speak and can listen. So let's take a quick tangent here to number 5, films. The word robot was first used 100 years ago in this book, and then a movie, and it was a play actually. And then we talk about as we portray artificial intelligence in the movies, a lot of and we'll talk about the fear coming up, but in the films, there's some scary ones, right? Some ones that take over, like in the Terminator. But there's also things in Star Trek and Star Wars that have positive robots. So we see that these are all being portrayed in our multimedia and in films. Number 6, for now, what are we using artificial intelligence to now? We hear it on the news, but do we realize that every time we go on to our smartphones and we interact with it in the map app, in time we buy anything, anytime we go on to the video apps, TikTok, right, YouTube, it's using artificial intelligence based on how we're interacting with it to pick the next videos, to pick the next product for us to buy. We use AI today, every day, in every app online. You can see also that doctors are using artificial intelligence for diagnosis, and in some cases you can see this machine on surgery. So artificial intelligence is helping doctors to diagnose and to help treat diseases. We're just now getting machines that can do farming, everything from helping to plant the crops to take care of them, and then to actually pick the produce and get it to market, is now starting to be involved with artificial intelligence. Number 7, what does this mean about the future? So we're learning about how AI was in the past and is today, so we can adapt to the future. There's excitement that good people will use AI to do good things. There's concern, indeed fear, that bad people could use AI to do bad things to harm humanity. So it's important for all of us to understand this framework so that we can help influence the positiveness. So that was a quick 7 steps that all comes together in what's called a system of integrated AI. So today we have what's called narrow AI, or single purpose, one task artificial intelligence that can do one thing. But rapidly we're seeing it integrate, right? We gave the example of not just planting the crops and taking care of them, but picking them, not just helping people code, but understanding why you code and what it does and how you have fluid. So we're seeing the capabilities of artificial intelligence expand. Today we have people that are able to use not just prosthetics to replace a leg or an arm, but now integrating that with minds to be able to control those, right? And then we've got some examples there in the movies as well, as where this will all go in the future. So keep in mind our present as we look at the future. Next page, please. AI minds. What does it mean, right? What can it mean when a machine based on human data actually learns to think? And what do we mean by think? What do we mean by being human? What do we mean by being able to take what it's learned from people and then apply it and make its own decisions and make its own way to make itself and make its next generation? What if we teach AI basic human values like respect and empathy, care and concern? What are the results if we don't? Let's keep that in mind, please. There's also a video. We call it Tech Links because all this links together, right? That is related. And a copy of this is available from Ms. Sally that helps show this. So that was a very quick introduction to artificial intelligence. Ms. Sally, before we go into the next one, is there any questions or comments, please?
I'm certain Sebastian has something to say, and so do I. I think what I found very fascinating is, which maybe you can tell us some other time if there's no time, or you can put in the comment section. I'd love to understand a little bit more of the 100 years ago, the first robot, and what they did with it, who discovered it. Because I think then the world was quick at some point, then we went to sleep. Because it's taken so long, then quickly now we back. And over to you, Ms. Oh, Douglas, you want to explain that first?
In the past, machines were made to do simple tasks like muscles, replace and enhance people's muscles, right? To do things that people
Mhm.
couldn't do or do things better. And so they would do simple tasks, they would do things, but people were in control of the machines, right? Somebody had to start the machine. And then we went from water to wind to steam, machine powered machines, but they all did tasks that humans controlled. Then we were able to use that and in so many ways make life better, right? And then for people and to make it easier. And then with that, we're able to do additional things. The challenge is now we're getting more and more capabilities. Now that the machines are based on our own data, right? What is it learning about us? What are we teaching our machines? If we look at what's on the internets today, some of that's concerning, and that's the data that's being used to train the AI models. So 100 years ago, it was mostly mechanical and doing machines. Today, it's going a different direction.
Thank you. Sebastian, over to you.
Well, this is really, really interesting and really fascinating, Douglas. And you are bringing a very, very great topic. Actually, you highlighted about AI on agriculture, farming, the factory. You said about medicine to the business, and this is really quite fascinating. See how the world is just running towards the artificial intelligence. Well, I was really invited. I think it was last year to go to one of the biggest conference in Kenya. It is called ALZEC, and I was invited to talk of the AI, partly on education. There's a lot of AI actually. The one that I shared to the people there was just seeing the things like quality AI, which is really work on image generator, the CapCut AI, GPT Go AI, which is combined Google searching a lot of intelligent resources. I also talked a little bit about Keeper, artificial intelligence, and ChatGPT. Which when I go to ChatGPT, actually that's where I talked a lot about how we use ChatGPT recently to our education. And the teachers were very, very interested with the topic. We see how we generate, a ChatGPT from OpenAI, company, which generate a lot of materials, resources that help teachers to kind of do their plans, their teaching, grammar. And as a teacher of English, I would use that to teach also grammar and structure. But again, recently we invited students from Bozeman, Montana High School. They came in Tanzania. There were 15 students who supported us on the issue of we call it speech and debate presentation for public schools in Tanzania. And one of the engines that we used to generate a lot of resources was ChatGPT, kind just to live from the parliamentary debate to public, we call it a public speech debate from United States. So kids from Montana State High School were very, very, sharp. We did that in 2 weeks intensive, collecting a lot of information, and kids in Tanzania were ready to present the topics. That was very fascinating. So I see how this engine, this artificial intelligence really, helping teachers, educators, academicians to do things. But one of the questions that I was asking from Kenya is how we do use these things more ethically, because again, we have to talk of the ethical issues related to GPT. Back to you, Douglas.
Fantastic perspective and experience, Mr. Mahamba. Thank you so much for sharing that. We talked about machines and 100 years ago were muscles, right? They would do work for humans. Now let's go from the muscles, from doing things, mechanical things, to minds. And let's talk about more about how we can apply our minds, both humans and then the machines that we're making. We're going to go from muscles to machine minds in 7 steps. So hang on. It's going to be quite a journey, kind of quick. We'll mention that this is a firestorm of data being given to you. All this data, the ebooks and the videos and the printed books are available from Ms. Sally. So you have a chance to go back. If this is too fast, you can go back at your own speed and go back through this. But let's go through this. So we mentioned about that the first machines were invented to help humans be stronger. You can see the giant grinder there that grind the wheat so they could make the flour. Right? Even from the first wheel that was invented was to help make pottery, ceramics for people, right? Number 2 is once we had the machines, then people wanted to be able to move. And so we used, next page, please. We then put the wheels on and had animals pull the carts and the chariots. Then we used how to use the mechanical powers with things with gears and cams, circles and cylinders to then control things like public clocks and what masters and how impressive that would have been 500 years ago to see a clock tell you the time. Next page. People then learned a way to measure things and the metric system. And there's a story about Charles Babbage, which we may not be able to get to, but the point being that people were able to have machines that moved, and it still took people to control those machines. Then in the 1950s, they started to make computers that were able to electronically control our machines, which brings us to number 3, and that's microprocessors. The chip, it's so tiny, and how the first chips were transistors and then thousands of transistors, and today we have billions of transistors, and so that says 1,000 times more computing capacity, right? And so how do we apply these silicon brains for computers to then enhance human lives, right? But it all starts with understanding the microprocessor. As we interface with machines, we are starting to make sure we understand more about humans. So in number 4, we look at how does a baby learn, right? When a human baby is born and its mind is so similar to a computer the first time when you turn it on, or a computer similar to the baby maybe. And so we learn about our senses and how we bring input into our brains and then how we learn, right? And how we capture that knowledge. But then once we understand our own memories, that brings us to number 5, is how do we apply this to computers? It is astonishing, for the first time in human history, massive data centers have information stored. And it's not just the information, it's how do you mine it? How do you apply this data? What is it being applied for? How can we be a positive force for humanity based on data mining and then applying that data? So we'll talk more about, there's a data center there on the left, right, which are just massive connected machines. How do we connect humanity? So let's talk about number 6. It's not just that we have the data, how do we learn? And so today, people teach machines, and it's called machine learning, and there's different ways to do that. We'll get into a couple of these topics at a high level, but how do people teach machines? In the past, even when we had computers, humans had to do every step in the code that would direct the machines, the computers, on what to do. Go do this task in this series of steps. But today we are writing code that teaches machines to learn for themselves, to go look at the data, to mine the data, to learn. And that's the whole basis of these models you're hearing about, Google's Gemini and Microsoft's ChatGPT and the others. And the point is, they've used large language models to then go through and to learn. But then they make decisions, and humans can't necessarily understand how they made that decision. That's another challenge. But machine learning, where people teach machines how to learn. Let's look at a couple more examples here, right? Next page, and that is that when we do a top level, we ask a question online, the machine is learning how we think. And there's some very interesting things on BBC about people making models of themselves and then wanting them to be in the office and do their job right, the interface with customers, even when they're not in the office. It's a digital version of themselves, but that's a different tangent. So there is a point called singularity. It's a single point where today it's hypothetically, it's a point where machines then learn to like humans do. So let's jump ahead to number 7, please. We'll take another pause at the machine minds. If we take what humans, as we build machines to mimic our muscles, now we're building machines to mimic our minds and the way that we think. But what happens when AI becomes smarter than we are, right? If machines can be more powerful, what happens when they get smarter? And so AI bots are doing more and more production jobs. We're seeing them take away jobs in the office as well, things like coding and customer services. And what does it mean to us? Well, let's look at the next chart. And one of the big things to keep in mind is humans designed the first artificial intelligence. But for the first time, you didn't have a steam engine that could then go and design another steam engine, right? Or even our electrical motors don't design other electrical motors themselves. But let's go to page 32, please. Humans designed the first AIs, but there's a point, singularity, where AI can then go and design additional AIs. On page 33, did we lose Miss Sally? We'll just continue on. There is a video called The Science of Bots that goes through these 7 steps. So let's take a pause there. Mr. Muhammad or others, any questions or comments before we press on, please?
Yeah, thank you. I think we have just lost Miss Sally, but we had a question on the chat box. This is Rukia from Kenya, who writes, "Are there control data in place to reduce negative effect of machine?" And she was just the machine that I was talking is just the mobile phone, the phone that she uses. So would you answer that, Douglas?
The short answer to that is yes, but yes, there are. But the reality is AI is proceeding so fast that government regulations aren't there. There is no legal framework. So we, the people, need to be able to have influence on these big companies and make sure that we have an inclusive and a diverse large language model that uses human input right into these models. It's a concern today, and that's the main point. Is we need to make sure that we hold those who are using and making AI accountable. Today it's a real challenge. We need to be much more engaged.
Well, thank you. I think Rukia, she's really satisfied with the answer. But you can also send many questions if you still have, put them in the chat. We'll be there on the background just to read them for you. Back to you, Douglas.
We've talked so much about energy throughout these 10 podcasts, right? And we talked initially where energy turned into matter, turned into space, if you remember the space discussions. But now energy within our own minds, the word is engram, and that's the basic thought in our minds gets stored in connected cells in our brain. That's an engram. But we need to take a pause and say, AI has such positives, right? The opportunity to share knowledge around the world, the opportunity to engage with once was not possible, with capabilities, right? To ask the questions, to then apply it to improve our lives. There's such positives, but we do need to take a pause and say, how is this going to retain its humanity even as it becomes smarter than us? So, Miss Sally, any questions or comments before we proceed on, please?
No, but I lost you. Did you guys notice you lost me?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't see the
We
presentation
noticed. We're
there
glad you're
anymore.
back.
I think we're having some internet drama. It so happens when we're expecting the rains. Um, so you can proceed as I get back. Maybe you can have a conversation with Sebastian as I get the presentation back.
No worries.
Because I
We'll
see.
continue on. So we've gone through two of the three, right? We talked about the smart, we talked about the social. There is an interesting point that even on our social media platforms, so much of that is AI based today. And a lot of the people that are making our artificial intelligence, their motivations, their goals were on page 35, just so you know, is their motivation is to engage, to capture our attention or to get our cash, right? Their motivation is to make money off of this. We need to be aware of that as a caution, as an influence. That we talked about humans, how humans make decisions based on values and interests, right? And our goals. But we need to be aware of the people that are driving AI and how they set the goal that AI is doing that interfaces with us. Another big challenge is there are interactions with machines that people may not know that are bots, that are machines. And while today computers don't feel, they can definitely learn about us and then communicate to us in a way that does make us feel like they care. So now let's look at from social to sentient to self-aware. We'll go through these 7 steps, and then we'll open it up for any questions. AI is a fascinating topic. So let's start with number 1, smart. Our species, Homo sapiens, means smart humans, right? In the past, there were different types of humans. That's another discussion. But our humans, we do things. We made tools, we do things. Then we make machines with muscles. But humans are smart. But by our measure of intelligence on page 37, we are making machines. Next page, please. We are making machines that, by our definition of smart, are smarter than us. They can think faster, they can have more data, they can make decisions faster, they can do things positive, like we talked about the farming and the medical, right? And helping us in the office, help us do our jobs more efficiently, help us to connect and communicate. How amazing it is to take a pause moment. We've got people from at least 3, maybe 4 continents here in this podcast. A few years ago, we couldn't do that. Before COVID, it was very hard to do this. Today, we do it routinely, and how wonderful that is. Artificial intelligence is a big part of this technology, but smart needs to be aware, right? Bots are beginning to do work once done by humans, from factories to office jobs to design jobs, right? What does that mean for humanities? And we talked about in biology, they said it was a primordial soup. And today we have that same thing with data. Let's go to number 2, speak. And so humans first used hand signals way a long time ago, used hands to talk. And then we developed tools. And so we were using tools with our hands. So then we had to use our voices and develop languages, right? And so we speak. And so we developed languages. Well, artificial intelligence is using language today. Hey, Siri, right? Go find me this answer, right? And it's interesting how machines are taking our voices and our pictures and putting together content and understanding. So today people teach AI to recognize human voices and then to do something with that data. Let's press on to number 3. Let you catch up there. Social, right? We humans, from our earliest history, were in groups and we worked together. We hunted and foraged and got food together and then made crops together, and then cities, and we make our cities. And today, let's go on to number 3, social, please, which is page 40. If we look at the past and how humans and how we've been able to, our societies, been able to thrive, it's because of the way we have social groups. And today, we don't just define social by being our friends that are physically in the same locations as us, it's around the world. And so today we connect on social medias. Next page, please. But we need to be aware that social media is increasingly the strings being pulled on this technology from behind the scenes is artificial intelligence. As we interact with the apps that we buy things, it has that history. It knows what we like. It presents that next video, that next story, that next thing of interest to gather our interest. It says, hey, go buy this because you like this, right? Increasingly, it's doing some thinking for us. It's something for us to be aware of. 4, stories. Humans, since our earliest days, have told stories. The first stories we told were about how to stay alive, how to survive, right? And then it became stories of interest, a way of teaching, and a way to bond our cultures together. We told stories. But increasingly today, it's artificial intelligence with these large data centers that are learning how we tell stories, why we tell stories, what's interesting to us. We use the big word algorithm, which is just basically saying, what are the steps that you take to go from the question to the answer, to where you are today, to the goals that we're trying to get to? And then who sets those goals in artificial intelligence? There's a word in Japanese called jidoka, and Toyota uses it a lot in making cars. But it basically means human and machines working together. And so while the example is in the production line, it applies to us as well. And so on page 43, you can see that the pictures of people interacting with data and artificial intelligence. As a data point, these pictures were made by Bing Image Creator, also called DALL-E. And it's interesting how we type in text and it would give us these visual pictures of what the text is that we put in. So there's a human machine interface just to make these pictures. But those who control the stories historically have controlled societies. What does that mean for us in the future? The next word we talk about is swarm. And so a lot of people think swarm being in the negative, but let's talk about swarm. Humans started out in one place and then spread around the world. We gave the example of printed books and how books were once written by hand. Once we can learn how to print them, then books could spread around the world. AI is now spreading around the world. And what took tens of thousands, then hundreds of years to spread around the world, AI, when Google released Gemini, it goes around the world in one push of a button. What does that mean in how we are applying our technologies today? So AI is increasingly connections in the world. How do we keep that positive? How do we keep our humanity even as we are rolling out these massive technologies and their huge impacts? Number 6, self-aware. We have the ability to think, to reason, right? We are teaching machines that same ability. But humans make decisions based on our values. How does AI make decisions? How do we influence that? How do we make sure it's inclusive and reflects what we care about, even as it makes the decisions that impact our lives? Humans throughout history have created things like art and music and science, right? And amazing tools and everyday objects. What is AI going to do as it becomes more and more aware? We talked about how so many of the AI companies today are driven by money and indeed power, right? That they are doing this for their benefit. What about humanity's benefit? And so we have a interest, we have a self-preservation, if you will, that we need to be involved in how this is all happening today. But let's pull this all together and take a pause. And sentient. Sentient means as a baby becomes a human, right, becomes an adult, it goes from others making decisions for it to making its own decisions. That's sentient, self-aware. I exist, right? I am part of a bigger community in Ubuntu, but I can do things, I can think, and I can use my muscles to do things. We're making machines that do the same. So, number 7, sentient actions. What are we doing with all this artificial intelligence? We look at humans and the things that we do, walk and talk and make things, and we are making machines to do the same. What happens when machines start doing that themselves? Let's go ahead and take a pause there, Miss Sally. Are there any questions or comments?
Yes, you have so many questions on LinkedIn. Do you want to finish and come back to questions, or you want to respond as we go?
The next page is there's a video called Science Thinks. And so
Mhm.
it goes back to how do we humans think, taking that as understanding that science as we then apply it to artificial intelligence. So let's go ahead and open it up for questions, please.
Okay, great. I think my connection, I'm struggling to get. Previously, I was getting questions straight away on this platform, but I saw there was one question from Selassie who was asking, is AI going to take our jobs, and what should we do about that?
Excellent question. There's a lot of concern today, right? So we'll start with the positives. AI is helping humans do so many jobs today, right? That's positive. It's working, back to the Japanese term jidoka, it's working together with us to help us do our jobs better, right? The challenge is as well, is there a point when humans aren't needed anymore and AI is doing all the jobs, right? With the muscles and its mind. The point being, the best thing we can do is like learning these 10 programs, these 10 podcasts that we've had, learn the knowledge so that we can adapt to the future, influence how AI is happening today, stay involved in it, and then adapt to the future changes. The jobs of the future will be much different than the jobs of today. But understanding the basics that we're talking here will help us all adapt.
Mhm. Thank you.
Uh,
Great
I would
answer.
also chip in quickly, and there's a question here, Mr. Douglas. So there's a lot of you have just talked about the positive side, but there's also a lot of critic. Like they are saying AI seem to fake things, and there's no human genuinity or originality of the work. For example, we talk of the language, prompt model, where it's just you use the prompt to write a lot of things. Now, where will we get those critical thinkers who generate a lot of like genuine information, like we are just doing on the writing journals, papers, and sort of that. If we continue really embracing the AI, thank you.
Fantastic question. We've tried to, on this podcast, look at the positive and how we all have actions to influence that. We definitely need to take a pause and say, good people use AI to do good, but bad people can use AI to do bad. And we do need to be aware of that. Everything from students cheating in classrooms, right, writing papers, but what about the businesses, right? That say, I don't care if it hurts the people. They have to be our customers and we want their money. That's their motivation, right? We have to be aware of this. The prompts you talked about, the fake news and being able to take everything that we consider human, our voices and our images, right, and the way we communicate, and taking that and then hijacking it and making fake news, right? We see political leaders there making, they didn't do it, it's fake, right? But deep fake, but they're out there making comments that they didn't really make, that somebody just made them make, and how that influences the world. Simply said, when we understand science, when we understand critical thinking, when we understand how to ask, hey, wait a second, is that real? We are thinking and questioning and challenging and not just accepting the data that we see, especially online. I hope that answered your question there, Mr. Mahamba.
Certainly, certainly. Thank you so much.
We do need to be aware of the concerns. We've covered the facts, right? The facts of AI. We need to address there are fears, there are concerns, there are, hey, this could go horribly wrong, right? Today, with the knowledge and the technology that we have, will people try to use it to control their own populations, control the people, right? To negatively influence not just big businesses, not just in governments. What about people trying to get others to believe the way they believe? Or how will it impact? We've got a big election coming up in the US next year, right? People are already concerned about the negative news and how AI will be used to cause panics and to influence people's votes because of the way of the information that they see. We do need to be aware of that. Ms. Sally, can you go to the next page? Okay, let's go to page 53, please. Fully respectful of all the questions about what is the potential negative impact of AI, from deep fakes and cheating to political to businesses, right? These are real concerns we need to be aware of. The very basic, the fundamentals, if you will, of artificial intelligence using large language models, using the data that we generated for the internet, so much of it for our own entertainment. Now it's taking that data and then saying this is humanity, right? This is how we make decisions. That's a concern. There's a lot of stuff on the internet that doesn't reflect my values, right? As basic human respect for each other, right? How we're all equal. How can we have equality and equity? So go back to page 53, please. There's a video called Stress Less. There you go. Perfect. And it's just a time to take a pause and say, yes, this whole subject of artificial intelligence is exciting and can be such a wonderful tool to do good things. We need to be aware of the bad things. It can cause us stress. Here's a video that can help us de-stress in 3 steps. So it's just a side note, just to be, yes, be aware of the negatives, but it's an exciting time, and let's look at the positives as well. Questions or comments, please?
Once again, apologies, I forgot to unmute. You have a very good question from Poja Mishra, a headmistress in a school in Delhi. Her question is, to what extent do we allow the use of AI in school?
That's an excellent question, right? AI in school. So the way I'd answer that is, first, I would make sure that the students, right, know how to write by hand, know how to draw pictures by hand, right? That we understand the human end of it first. Then, as we engage in technology, that it's humans driving the questions, right? And then we have the students do for themselves using the AI and the computers as an aid, but it doesn't do the thinking for students. That we talked earlier, an example of when calculators first came out, there was a professor in a university, and he actually had his electrical engineering team go in there and solder the computers so they would give the calculators, the handheld calculators for a math test, give the wrong answers. 1 + 1 is 3. And then they let the students use them and see how long it took the students to figure out they was making mistakes, right? And so it took them a long time. A lot of them never got there. And then they took a pause and said, look, technology doesn't do the thinking for you. It doesn't do the work for the students. We need to make sure the students have their own critical capabilities. That's my opinion. Others? Any other comments?
Unless from Sebastian, have you seen some questions on Facebook?
And not really, but I want just to add to the question that has been asked. And well, just to add on top of what the question was asked, there's a lot of we call it the anti-AI tool that actually help a teacher and a student to do more perfect. For example, in school, in college, they have brought the Turnitin AI, which is look the perfect work that we submit to the professors or to the lectures. Also, we have things or like a tool like OpenAI text classifier, which again try to see the quality of the text that you're sending. So it's a tool that helps the other tool. Originality AI, Writer AI, Giant Language AI, to Hanging Face Open tool. Those are the two that actually would try to check where you have just done something wrong, or you want to help students to check whether they're writing perfect. But again, like you said, Douglas, the genuinity or originality of a student, maybe in school, how he or she has to draw himself or starts writing her own, work, that is much more better to support the student at school. Thank you.
Thank you so much. These are excellent discussions. We've got about 8 minutes left, so I'd like to make some comments and open up for any other questions. But very serious topic, right? But fundamentally, we look at a child, we look at a brand new child that can't think for itself, right? And so when that baby is born, we as a community teach that child how to think for itself and then how to do things. There's a direct analogy, a compare and a contrast to how humans learn as a baby to how we are helping AI learn today, right? We're giving it these massive data centers with data and it's making decisions, but we can't lose sight of how humans relate to each other. Our history is full of negatives, how we didn't treat each other well. How can we influence this whole effort today on artificial intelligence so that we can work together for peace and prosperity for all? We start with the knowledge, we start with the simple science that these kind of podcasts are trying to get out there. Then we need to work together. But it's an exciting time, it's also a scary time. Quickly, in the last couple minutes of my time before I turn it over, is there's some open-ended questions that we want to ask. Not that we'll have the answers today, but we want us together as a community to be working together as what will happen when artificial intelligence are functionally smarter than people, right? Will smarter electronics make dumber people? That's a concern today. How do we make sure we don't? How do we have in our schools so we make sure that the students are getting their critical thinking? One day, will AI control the online words and then want to control the words and then want to control the world, right? We need to be aware of these kind of questions. Who's behind pulling the strings on AI today? The humans that can gain by the benefit. What happens if we lose control there? Two questions we put out there just to have everybody be thinking about. There's a couple more on page 56. Today, people often program artificial intelligence to manipulate personalized online social conversations. We need to be aware that our online bots are able to increasingly know more about us, but it's doing that not because it cares about us, but to influence how we view, how we speak, the knowledge we're getting in, how we buy things today, and eventually how politics will want to influence how we vote, right? This is a concern. We need to be aware of this. And number 4, one day will AI use information and stories to entertain, influence, and then want to have control over us? We need to be aware of this. The critical thinking skills that we get in these science programs give us the means to defend against this. So there's a couple other topics we can talk about, but in the last 5 minutes, we'd like to open it up. Questions and comments, please.
Well, I'll just read on the private chat. We have Rukia from Kenya who writes, so do you want from the as we delve deeper, navigate to this conversation, do you want to tell that we have to invest in media literacy and forget on the other way that we have been using before? What is your stand as you are commenting to this? What is your perspective to this, Mr. Douglas?
My perspective, as evidenced by my gray hair, right, is we need to understand the basics. We need to know the basic science. Why do we care about the four forces of an airplane? The steps in how a car are made? What's really the science behind a smartphone? We care about those things because it gives us the basics to then understand the science, understand how we use those today to make the current products. And then even as AI is coming into our lives, how can we then make the choices that we use it here, we don't use it here, it's using this, we're going to have influences to this. We as a nonprofit have offered all of our material to be part of the language models training AI. Now, I don't know if any of the companies are taking it or not, but we're offering it to them, right? So simply said, learn the basics, look at ourselves and understand what it means to be human, even as we influence how artificial intelligence is being applied. That's my opinion. Others, I'd be interested in what others think, please.
Thank you. Back to you, Miss Sally. I hope Rukia
Thank
is
you.
also satisfied. Thank you.
Yes, and I hope you can hear us. Yes, there's a lot of engagement. We have comments, suggestions, and one of the ones I've seen is I think it's still a very huge concern on will AI take over our jobs? And I think we've seen some massive job losses. So I think my appeal would be if we could reconsider in the very near future to get the same podcast back. And then, if in the spirit of Christmas, Douglas, if maybe since there are a lot of people that are very curious on this, think about us as adults who know how to navigate and get information. What about children, and especially children in marginalized communities? So we would love to do our best and ensure they can access this information. So we could drop a few, maybe 2 or 3 books on AI topic as ebooks, or you can comment and tell us if you'd like to get a book. You can share. I mean, we've come up with very many creative ways of sharing content with our children. If they don't have, if your school does not have laptops or your child at home does not have access, you can share it on phone. You can listen. This podcast can be played again. You can access it on YouTube, and you can access the book on the phone if there are no gadgets. Right? Make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
My last comment, if I could, before we turn it over to you. Thank you. Engaging. We have at our fingertips today so much knowledge. We are using that knowledge to do things. We're making machines with muscle, right? We're at the
Mm-hmm.
verge of making machines that think. We need to figure out what that all means to us together. But by the first time in human history, we can engage each other around the world. We can work together and apply this technology and improve all lives. I look at the positives. We need to be aware of the negatives and then work together to drive positive improvements to all lives. That's my opinion. Fantastic discussions. Really enjoy this. Let's turn it back over to you, Mr. Mahamba.
Well, I'm so excited actually to have been invited on board. I've learned a lot, you know, based on the AI. Today I've just, goes deeper to my understanding of AI. Thank you so much for invitation. Miss Sally, thank you, Douglas. Yeah.
Thank you. This is one of my favorite topics. I love all things AI. I use a lot of tools, and I'd love to share some of the tools that I've seen as my favorites that teachers could benefit from using. Of course, we still, especially in Africa, I can see like in Tanzania, there's so many meetings that have been going on, conferences, especially on ethics in AI. So my parting shot is as we weigh this and that and how we can integrate AI in our daily lives, This gets back to integrity. If we can teach our children integrity, to be ethical, to just be good humans, then they will use AI for good. Otherwise, if we choose not to use AI, we're just gonna miss out. So when we're talking about these job losses, AI has as well increased opportunities. There are so many things you can do. There are so many jobs you can do using AI. Within our organization, it has made our life extremely easy. A task that could be done within 3, 4 days, we see ourselves doing it in a day. And it's just because of AI. Because including the tools that you usually use, your Canva, your project management system, anything, now the integration of AI has made them so smart that even I, who is horrible with graphic designing, I'm now able to use Canva. How awesome is that? So thank you, our listeners. I love it. I see we have a lot of people that are engaging on the LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just know we're going to share these resources. Just comment, text if you'd like us to send you a book. We're happy to do that. This podcast happens every Saturday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Southern Africa time. Sebastian time, I think is you're 1 hour ahead, right?
Yeah, it's
5.
always 5. Yeah, 5 evening here in Tanzania.
Yeah. Your parting shot, Douglas? See, we're 1 minute past.
Thank you to be able to talk the basics as we build a better future together. This has been great. I really enjoyed these. Science is important.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, and see you next week on Saturday. Same place, same time. Cheers. And thank you very much, Sebastian.
Thank you so much.